You know, I don't really appreciate my counsel after this ban slate, because I made an entire video talking about why Terrakion is actually not broken at all in this metagame, and lo and behold, they then went and banned Terrakion. So that's really thoughtful. Anyhow, what's poppin', people? We got one more ban slate today, and we got a couple new updates to the NU tier. Terrakion and Inteleon have been sent to NUBL, among a whole bunch of other votes. We're going to talk about why these Pokemon got voted, why the outcomes were what they were, and of course I'll throw in my own opinions on here, why I voted like I did. If you've been enjoying this type of content, of course, subscribe. We love making this around here, so if this is something that interests you, stick around for the fun. We got PS Lives too. It's just a great time. And today I'm actually going to talk about why Pokemon got banned first instead of staying in you, because I just have more to say about Terrak and Inteleon getting the ban, because as you see, I voted... My slate was quite interesting, I would like to say. I banned one thing. So you got me and Keo not really thinking much at all needs to change with the tier. Mary as well. Apparently she only voted to ban Terrak, which I find interesting. But let's start with Terrak, because we made this video where I talked for like 25 minutes. I was like, yeah, Terrakion's actually not that overpowered. Now, this is not to say that I see a Terrakion ban and I go, what the hell, guys? How'd you ban Terrakion? This one is not even that good. No, like, there's plenty of reason to why Terrakion got banned, and as y'all remember, I did talk about it. In that video, I talked about why people might vote to ban Terrakion, and a lot of it comes down to defensive counterplay being 1, limited, and 2, inconsistent. And what do we mean by that? Well, if you remember that video, defensive counterplay mostly was just some ground types. You have things like Mudsdale, Gligar, and Palisand as some of your best options, with a lot of emphasis on Palisand and Gligar. And then some other options like Vileplume, for example, can pivot around Terrak. Something like maybe Bronzong, something like, say, let's try to think of something else. I had something else in my mind, but we'll just leave it at Bronzong for now. Something else like him, or maybe Registeel, where you could at least pivot around Terrakion's stab move, one of them, and take advantage of choice lock sets pretty effectively. And compounding that with all the offensive counterplay that there is to Terrakion, I felt that it was a fine presence to keep around in the tier. Yes, it was going to be like A+ S rank as a wall breaker, but I didn't personally feel like it was overbearingly strong, even relative to some of the other... I mean, we have things like Chandelure in the tier. These like Thundurus Incarnate. Like, this is... It's not like Terrakion feels out of place, you know? But I think the most important thing to keep in mind with Terrak is... That's like I said, where the counterplay is exploitable. So although there's a good amount of defensive counterplay, good amount of overall counterplay, a lot of it isn't the most reliable when you look at Terrakion in the grand scheme of it. So, Choice Band Terrakion is probably the biggest example of this, where you don't need a ton to go right for it to run through a team. Things like Palisand, yes, they're going to be really hard. You're probably never breaking a Palisand with Terrakion. Vileplume, though, that is 2-shot by CB Stone Edge. Gligar, that Mon with Rocks Up is just about 2-shot by CB Stone Edge, and it does not do enough with Earthquake to actually threaten you. So you can stay in and just go for your overall 3-hit KO and you're fine. Mudsdale, I'll be honest with you, Mudsdale just isn't that common, but CBCC does 5 million, so Mudsdale switching in like once. And then, you know, talk about things like Bronzong again, that is 2-shot by CBCC. So like Galarian Slowbro takes 5 million from Stone Edge, so you can at least scout it if you're a generator, but it's doing a ton. And so there is a lot of pressure Terrak exerts. And if we want to open up substitute Sword Stance Terrakion discussions, well, that kind of just makes the issues all the more profound when you're looking at some of these defensive checks, because things like Gligar, they can't touch you. You Terrafly and you sub, and Gligar is just setup fodder. And we don't really have anything in the format that can really disrupt that, because what do you care about? We don't have Infiltrator Mons outside of Chandelure, and that Mon is outsped and one-shot by a Stone Edge. And in things like Prankster in the tier, they don't have Encore, other than Grafaiai. And Grafia is not really that common right now for a set outside of, like, Unburdened Swords Dance. So, sure, you got, like, Diancie, but you're outspeeding that. You got, like, Klefki for a Prankster mod, but doesn't get Encore. Thundurus, same deal. Prankster mod, but it doesn't get Encore. Also, Thundurus is faster, so you'd always be at least trying to break the sub with Thundurus. But unless you have your own Terra and you Terra Ground, you're probably just trading. So, you know, is it really that great? I don't know. So, you look at CB plus Substitute Swords Dance and how they kind of really effectively negate most of your counterplay. I can at least get the Terrakion ban vote. I do want to also give full disclosure on what the plans were for Terrakion specifically, because Eternally and I had talked about this, because both of us weren't too sure if it would get banned. He ended up voting ban, I think just to expedite the process somewhat, but also because he felt it was at least enough up in the air, and we're gonna vote on NUBL again come March. Just spoiler alert, because we're getting the DLC 2 tier shift from RU then. As y'all know, we always have that one big wave that hits after the mega shift where OU dumps things everywhere. RU will give that to us in March, so if Trax and NUBL then, hey, we'll revote, maybe it comes back. But we were gonna plan on suspect testing it anyway, because it has been a very contentious Pokemon. So, so everyone knows, it's not like this mon got this, you know, easy ban from within council, where we're all just like, oh yeah, no, broken. No, we were gonna keep bringing the discussion up. Just decided at this point, hey, the metagame's still kind of turbulent, so if there is such a borderline case, a ban is fine, right? And then Inteleon kind of is the same logic on that regard, where I disagree with this ban vehemently, and I gotta be honest, I don't really relate at all to the ban voters, where I think this is just a bad vote. No disrespect, but I actually think the ban vote on Inteleon makes very little sense. Again, the reason, I get it. So let's talk about it like Terrakion. Why ban Inteleon? Well, for starters, please refer to me to the bulky water type in you that you feel happy about using right now. Because you cannot do that. Unless you want to talk about a Terra-watered Registeel or like AV Glowbro, there aren't any. And that's the biggest reason I believe that Inteleon got banned the first time, and I think the second time, and now the third time. I think it's banned 3 times now, maybe it's only twice. But Inyu just hasn't had bulky waters at all this gen. And so, you look at your next best options, they're either blanket special walls, which a lot of them get very heavily pressured by things like Terra Water Specs Inteleon. You pump them, and a lot of them just get 2-shot from there. So they better have a resistant Terra. And that resistant Terra better be water, because otherwise you're just getting ice beamed. It's tough. It's really tough to deal with a Pokemon defensively that is that fast. It is not easy. You have to rely on your offensive counterplay, and even then, with how fast Inteleon is naturally, it's basically the fastest relevant non-Scarfer at this point. I don't really think Jolteon and Electrode, Hisuian of course, are too prominent anymore or worth discussing too much. Jolt's still, I believe, viable, but neither of them are, you know, dominating the meta like they were 3 months ago. And that makes it really hard because you just don't have a ton. You better have a Scarfer on every team. You better keep that Scarfer alive, or you better have priority. And what's the priority in Inyu right now? It's like first impression Flygon. And from there, Sucker Punch Brute Bonnet, Sucker Punch Zoroark, not a ton. Croak is also still not really appearing in the metagame. And I do feel like that's probably a big benefit to Inteleon as well. You 2-shot Croak with Specs Ice Beam, but you have to still respect the threat of Toxicroak. You have to make that play, or, you know, you turn on it. And as long as Croak exists and can, you know, sucker you, that's a problem for you. And beyond special walls that are just, you know, generically bulky, grasses and dragons are going to be the next things you look at trying to hit with Inteleon. And, I mean, it gets Ice Beam, and Ice Beam basically 2-shots them all. Goodra, Dragalge, Bonnet, what's another grass? Rotom-Mow, I think is just straight up 1-shot, not even really a check. I think Specs Hydro, 2-shots Rotom-Mow as well. So how good of a check is it unless you're Scarf? Not that great. So that's the perspective on the Inteleon ban. Now, where I disagree with it is Eternally can attest to this, because he watched me use a lot of Inteleon on ladder the day we were doing the voting. And I don't know if we'd ever seen a more useless Pokemon in those games specifically. I consistently was coming up short on 2-shots versus a lot of Pokemon. Even when I Terra Watered, Screamtail was like just bouncing it off. Now maybe I was just running into the only like max special defense, max HP Screamtail on the ladder, but it was something happening. Throw that in, by the way, about Terrakion too. Screamtail can be faster in Encore, the sub SD. Screamtail like was just about the closest thing to a Terrak counter that isn't Palisand. It was like a really good check. Still not a counter because CB Stone Edge hurt, but there you go. There's another mention of something that helped a good strat. But back to Inteleon. I was trying out, because what people really gasped Inteleon for in the previous metagame was snipe shot stuff. They felt that crit Teleon just broke the tier. And so, I even mentioned to Eternal, I'm like, alright, let's try crit Teleon some. Because, again, surely this broken move will do something. No, it didn't help. Registeel, Sylveon, Screamtail. For some reason, I still could not break these. Now, generational bad luck, maybe. Because the calcs are good. But even if I get the first crit, okay. I'm still at 2-shotting. Most of the time, at least. And they will Terra Water on me. And then I never break them. And admittedly, like, if I have to Terra Water a special wall to check the Inteleon, I will. Like, I really don't feel like that is a high opportunity cost in the metagame where there's not bulky waters. Like, oh no, I have to have one now and I can Terra to do that. No! It's just not like a huge thing that I take too seriously as like big bad having to do. So, do that as you will. I couldn't convince myself to vote ban on Inteleon, even if a lot of the on-paper arguments still applied to an Inteleon ban. My gameplay just did not reflect it, especially even when I was like playing against Inteleon. The one time Inteleon felt too much was in a test game that I did for in UCL with Danny. And I will not talk about that too much because maybe we bring the set we were using, or the team. I don't want to let y'all know. Maybe someone that Danny's gonna have to face is watching this week. Yeah. You don't get that leaking. Yeah, that's why I voted do not bet on Inteleon, though. My own experience, I was not getting... It felt like Inteleon, basically, best way I could put it, is the special walls were finally not as prone to just the 2-shot without Inteleon having to exhaust its own Terra. And if Inteleon has to exhaust its own Terra, I will gladly counter Terra to check it and never have issues with it for the rest of the game. To me, not an issue, so... Add on that offensive counterplay, although kind of limited. There's still enough of it, because, like, okay, there's so many good Scarfers. There's still, the good priority is, like, really good still. Again, like, we're talking CB Flag on First Impression. Brute Bonnet is still a great mon. Zoroark is a solid Pokemon. These are not things that I'm upset about having to use. AV Glowbro can at least let you pivot a little bit, and Terra Water on that is similarly really good. Regen means you're not something like Sylveon that's forced to waste turns using your Wish. His name is Screamtail. It's just, Eternally told me he was using Specs until it was Scald, and I think with the burn threat, that ended up pushing a lot of these mons, if they didn't Terra, into a water type, into 2-shot range. So maybe I didn't try that, or maybe even just using Surf instead of Snipe Shot when I was using the Specs. Maybe that would have been better. But again, I struggle to say that because Hydro Pump wasn't getting the KOs I need. Do you think Surf's going to? So again, there's my take on Inteleon. I'll talk now about the mons. I'm gonna attempt to go in order of what got the most ban votes to the least. So Chandelure at the end, Scrafty to start. I believe Scrafty for a lot of the bans may have been a little bit on paper threat. Because I'm gonna be honest, I did not see a ton of Scrafty when I was laddering. I don't know how many people went out of their way to use Scrafty, but even seeing it in NUCL this week, it was very underwhelming. And by underwhelming, I more mean actually just absent. I only remember seeing one game of Scrafty. I think it was Arafiend's game versus, not Arafiend? Is that his name? Fiend is what he goes by now. I saw one game, they were using HO with a Terran, Poison, Dragon, and Scrafty. And I remember it Terran versus, I think, a Sylveon? And got forced out immediately after the person they were facing switched. So that was very interesting. I will say, my own experience using Scrafty felt very good. I do think the mon is a legitimate, like, A rank, A plus rank threat. I just didn't like how reliant I was on needing to Terra to beat what normally walled me. And even then, decent amount of the time, it felt like Scrafty was just not bulky enough to really take advantage of the Terra. Getting in was kind of hard outside of pivots. Like Scrafty, compared to like Snorlax, where I feel like Lax is just so fat that it could switch in on mons and set up very freely. I felt Scrafty was just more pressured. So like something like Dragalge just does so much more. Having to rest felt more forced, and thankfully you do have Shed Skin, you do have Drain Punch. That helps offset it a little bit, but I didn't feel like getting bulk up off was that easy of a task. So I still voted to not ban it. There was one game I got on the ladder where Scrafty just absolutely obliterated someone. And I did look at that game as a little bit of a raised eyebrow, because it did feel like my opponent really could do too much. I Terra'd versus a CC Poros, and it's like, yeah, I mean, you can't really do much. They didn't have anything. Their ground type was a Gligar. Like, what is that doing versus Scrafty? Nothing at all. Where I would say that maybe that isn't really Scrafty being broken, and more just an issue with the opponent, was their team had no breaking power. Their best special attacker to hit me was what seemed to be a bulky Dragalge. So, you tell me, what's the defensive Dragalge gonna do to a Scrafty with near max investment in special defense? I don't personally know, but maybe I'm missing something. But that's really what felt like Scrafty, or what made Scrafty feel the best. When I rolled a matchup versus a very bulky team that didn't have a way to actually exert that offensive pressure we're talking about. If I'm able to just sit around for 10 turns, you know, doing whatever, bulking up, knocking, draining, yeah, I mean, Scrafty feels broken as all hell. The matchups where I couldn't do that, it felt kind of meh. I just appreciate Snorlax more in that regard, because I'm so much bulkier, and I still can throw off body slams and go for paralysis. It's not like Snorlax doesn't have early and mid-game utility a la Scrafty. So, there's my take there. I think Scrafty, and even Snorlax, I think these buds are going to get looked at more in the coming weeks, but for now, it doesn't get banned. And then, looks like everything else only has 4 votes. Wow, I thought I saw 5 votes for Sceptile. Man, let's go to Sceptile next. Sceptile, I almost voted to ban, but a lot of it was contingent on seeing it do more in UCL. I actually think my team was the only team that brought Sceptile Terrain this week. I know Terrain got more usage than just us, but it was an electric Terrain team that I saw in the other game that I remember. I still have to go back and watch more of the game, so maybe we saw more Terrain that I'm letting on. But we brought Sceptile, and it did not do as much as I would have liked to see. I remember a Screamtail lived our +2 acro, and it T-waved us, and that was kind of that. We did have Healing Wish, but we had to preserve Healing Wish for a different mon. It kind of sucks there. And I actually think if we Leaf Blade the Screamtail at one shot, but that's beside the point. I think Sceptile is going to be very contentious for this coming up week. And I say that mostly because as these tournaments go on and as these metagames develop, you do see a lot of people trying to experiment with HO, trying to break it. Because HO is the most snowbally archetype you've got in Pokemon, literally based on winning games as quickly as you can. So people really like that because if you're in a best-of-1 tournament setting, it is pretty beneficial to bring a team that can just roll a good matchup and stomp your opponent out in 10 turns. Sceptile fits very well on these types of teams. Psychic Terrain is pretty good from what I've seen. And so, I do think Sceptile could get a little bit problematic, especially these bulkier sets. I think you do want to go near max HP, or just max HP, because, like, the only mon you needed to arguably EV for originally for speed was like Scarf Inteleon. And that required a whole 16 EVs. Like, wow. 16 speed EVs. Oh no, I only get 240 HP EVs instead of 252? Damn, man. I'm screwed. Like, who cares? And now that's gone. Okay, I got all the HP. And the max HP Sceptile honestly does look pretty disgusting when you see it play. We ended up tanking a Dragalge, and it looked like it was offensive. We lived a Dragalge Sludge Bomb from full after getting our Psychic Seed. Like, that's the bulk we're talking about. Mon ate that up for breakfast. And so, I could see that definitely breaking the Pokemon. You take a Mon that is already impossible to outspeed, you make it impossible to one-shot, and even though it's not the strongest Mon, you're at least using Swords Dance. You can Terra Flying with Acrobatics. That move becomes very, very spammable when you look at Sceptile's overall coverage. Complements it quite well. And so, yeah, I keep saying it, so... So I do anticipate more Sceptile talk, especially if we see further experimentation with terrain of really any kind. I expect Electric Terrain and Psychic Terrain both to get a good amount of use. Psychic Terrain I default to a little bit more though, because Healing Wish is so easy to fit on it, thanks to NDD. And we'll see where it goes from there. Next one up, I'll talk about Snorlax. I didn't vote ban this time around because I just haven't gotten to using Snorlax and haven't faced enough of it. I used Scrafty, didn't use Snorlax. But I anticipate Snorlax being about on par with Scrafty. There's that. I think with Snorlax right now, people just... It didn't seem as obscene as some of the other things in the tier. It's like Terrakion is really easy to look at and call OP because, I mean, limited defensive counterplay and ability to get by your defensive counterplay. Inteleon seems more OP on paper because you just... Like, where's the water resists? And, okay, you see the water resist? Okay, do they take Ice Beam well? No? Okay, cool. So, I get that. Snorlax, again, it's a mon that I think actually could very quickly become problematic in the tier. For now, though, I just don't think it is. Especially because I have experimented with some Pokemon like Avalugg. I've done some Iron Press Avalugg usage. And I honestly think that it just dunks on Snorlax quite hard. Even something like Body Press Registeel, I don't really see how Snorlax is ever beating. And when I say Body Press, I mean Iron Defense Registeel. I don't really know how Snorlax beats it. You boost faster. And I mean, if you're running the rest set, Snorlax is actively not beating you. I think it's a trade at the end of the day, but it's pretty even. We have a lot of counter bulky setup in the tier right now. To where I really don't think any of them outside of Glowbro are too broken. And I didn't even vote Glowbro ban because of like some regenerator set. Why did I vote to ban Glowbro? This is all we're talking about Snorlax for. I've talked about this one too many times in the past, leave me alone. So why did I vote ban on Glowbro? Well, did you know it can still use Quick Draw, Quick Claw? I will vote ban on this Pokemon until you cannot use that combo. Smiles. It's still competitive in my view. I really don't think that combination is any place in competitive play. And I might still vote ban on it if we ever ban Quick Claw. That's a discussion for another video. We might ban Quick Claw. But I look at Glowbro and even with Quick Claw banned, I still might arguably vote ban. I might still vote ban because it still has Quick Draw. That is 30%. That is a Scald Bird's chance to just decide, oh, I'm faster than you. And that's how a lot of my games have gone too, which is why I don't think it's Quick Claw and I think it's Glowbro. I've had several games that I've played where I had my Glowbro out and my opponent was thinking, okay, I knocked them. Surely I win now. No. Quick Draw just still keeps activating because 30% is not low. You've been Scald Burned multiple times in a row before. You think you won't get Quick Draw multiple times in a row? Yeah. So, that's where I stand on Glowbro. I just don't think that Mon has place in any competitive tier, with this caveat, where it is able to one or two shot too much of the tier without fearing getting popped in return. That's the bar. Keep in mind, Glowbro is not banned from OU, even though I think a lot of people would probably agree the Quick Draw, Quick Claw combo is pretty disgusting. And the reason for it is because Glowbro is not bulky enough for OU standards. So, getting that random cheese priority, a lot of the time doesn't actually matter in some of these higher tiers because you're not getting the same amount of damage that you would maybe down in Inu. So, I think you can arguably vote ban on this mon if you believe that Quick Draw Quick Claw is just not as good anymore because you're not doing enough damage to the mons you're having to try and outspeed now. That's basically where the counter argument is to a Glowbro ban. I personally just end up believing right now you still do too much damage overall, but I have begun seeing the mons starting to feel less annoying. Mostly when I've used it, I've seen a good amount of instances where, hey, there are some mons now. I'm not getting them 2-shots I used to get, or those 1-shots I used to get. Still think at the moment it's OP. And frankly, maybe at the moment I'm voting to ban it because I just think it's better to not let the bullshit sit in the tier until we have our March tier shift, where then, okay, I'm really happy to deep dive analyze all of the mons. Glowbro felt like just easy get the dumb mon out. Might wonder then why I voted not to ban Sceptile. Arguably Scrafty Snorlax as well count as dumb cheese. Again, Sceptile I haven't seen enough of. I haven't used enough of it. Glowbro? Seen plenty of it. Used plenty of it. I can only get so many ladder games, man. I can't play literally 100+ games in 1 week. I'm not Prime X Bosseru X. Rest in peace to the homie. And then we got Thundurus. This is actually a mon that I wanted on the slate. I looked at Thundurus and I said, there's no way this mon's in the tier, right? And so I said, let's vote on it. It at least looked problematic on paper. Or at least like I don't even want to say that. It looked like a mon that we should vote on paper. Like, Thundurus just genuinely is a mon that I'm like, why is this an Inu? It's like Terrakion, where I always wanted to have the votes, even if I didn't think I'd vote ban. I still thought they were good votes to have just so we could ensure, like, okay, is Council on the same page with whether or not we should ban? If so, cool. If not, okay. And I voted not to ban Thundurus at the end of the day, because I think the reliance on Terra is very, very noted. You do a lot of the time need to Terra Blast Flying to be too good of a mon, or run it on like some snow team for the coverage you need on it. Mostly when talking about hitting things like Flygon. A lot of it's Flygon, guys. But even with Nasty Plot, a lot of special walls are still staying alright versus it. And I just haven't felt that the pivot set is some oppressive threat that just cannot be stopped. So, for now, he's okay to keep around. Maybe later on in the tier we feel that it makes too much progress too easily with plot, you know, knockoff sets, stuff like that. And at Chandelure, we had just acid voting to ban it. Bless you, my man. Someone had to do it. Chandelure, I think it's got very, very noted weaknesses that are going to prevent it from being overbearing. For one, if you're running specs, you are almost as weak to hazards as humanly possible. And so that's naturally just going to limit a Pokemon like Chandelure that doesn't really have a great defensive typing. You have a lot of very, very common weaknesses, particularly to Dark and Ground. And you're also not that fast, so a lot of the tier, it's not like a Inteleon issue where you hit super hard and you're super fast. Shandy has a vast amount of offensive counterplay. It's easy to look at Chandelure and see the specs overheat calcs and go, wow, this mon's broken. But I think you gotta go a little bit further than that to really get an accurate understanding of where Chandelure is. So I hope y'all enjoyed this. Like I said at the beginning, Terrakion and Inteleon now banned. I'm sure a lot of y'all will disagree with some of these bans, so hey. It happens. We still got plenty of other mons to use in the tier, so don't get too sad. And hey, now you can use Terrakion and RU. We can begin from Fraud Watch to God Watch. Then Terrak can get banned from RU and then banned from UU. And be right back where that boy should be. So look at it, that's how you take the positive from this. Sure, Terrakion's been banned from PU and NU now, but that just means he's rising back to where he belongs. I'll catch y'all next time. Hope you enjoyed the video. Peace.